My Adventures with Superman, also known as that show where Superman is a magical girl. But don't worry, like every other magical girl, he can still beat Goku. On a more serious note, My Adventures with Superman is currently in its second season and it's pretty okay. I'm not that impressed with the plot, or rather how the plot is progressing, but it's doing a good job with the characters. At least that's what I wrote before Kara showed up and gave us back to back some of the best episodes in the show. But that's not why you clicked on this video. I can talk about her later. You clicked on it because you either don't like or don't know why people don't like how the characters in the show look and you wanted to hear someone talk about it. Or because you watch all of my videos, in which case, thank you. One of the most consistent criticisms I see of this show is the character design, with a lot of people at least initially not being fans of how the characters look. Of course, these looks can grow on you. A lot of people were iffy on Lois's new design until that one scene where she bent over slightly and activated all the neurons. But, you know, sexy cartoon characters aren't exactly the focus of this video. And frankly, this problem is mostly focused on the designs of the villains. And from there, we can start going somewhere. By the way, tell me which of the designs in this show you liked and disliked down below in the comments. In all honesty, problems might be a strong word. I know there are people who like the designs in this show, and there are perfectly sensible reasons why all the characters look like that. I'm more looking at this trying to figure out the more subjective perspective of the people who don't like the designs. It's not bad that they look unique. Everything always tries to distinguish itself among its peers. I mean, look at how many looks Atomic Skull's gotten. Also, Atomic Skull might be the villain in the show with the design most faithful to how he looks in other media. But before we go over what I think is the show's main design, Sin, let's talk about some other reasons some may not like the character designs. Or rather, I'll talk and you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong. Now, a few ideas come to mind. Of course, there's the race aspect. Some people don't like changing the races of characters under any circumstances. But people have complained about the white characters too, so we'll have to dig deeper than just that. I think the most basic and easily disproven is the idea that it's because the characters aren't sexy. Easily disproven, not because there aren't people who are upset that this became this, but because, well, I don't think many of the people who are upset Parasite looks like this found this attractive, but that's just a theory. Plus, I've been told by many people that they think the characters do look attractive. And have you seen what the internet has done to Lois? I just find it hard to believe sex appeal is the thing holding this show back. There's also the possibility that this is just a case of people not liking new stuff until it grows on them, as I touched upon earlier. But I don't think having every single character bend over will work quite as well as it did for Lois. No one even noticed Kara do it. Showing their backs may yield some results though. Sometimes people are just less receptive to new things that aren't immediately a notable improvement over what came before. So those changes have to prove themselves. Look at Mixie's Pitlick. I didn't like his design when I first saw it, though I suppose it's grown more on me. The blue elf look and him being a prisoner for the Council of Loises that I just remembered exist as I write the script are a huge departure from what we usually get. It's also understandable as a means to distinguish him from the late great Gilbert Gottfried, whose voice is basically married to the usual design at this point, so I can see why they chose not to try to compete. Then there's Livewire. She's just completely different from the source material to the point where her electric powers and name are the only thing keeping her identifiable. And what the show did give us isn't exactly groundbreaking. She's a thief with lightning powers who gets dragged into Task Force X. And let's face it, bleaching the race-swapped black woman's skin white would probably have sent some mixed messages the show has no interest in. But that doesn't change the fact that one of these designs looks more interesting than the other. Please do not be afraid to put these characters in ridiculous costumes. Personally, with how much time our main characters spend at the Daily Bugle, I think it's a waste to have the shock jock just be a hired gun, but this isn't about characterization. Conversely, I actually think Roughhouse might look better than he does in the comics, but I've also only been able to find one picture of him, so I'm not sure how valid my opinion is. In the end, this is still a pretty subjective look at things. Switching gears to look at the Justice League cartoon, I think Shade looks much cooler in the comics than he does in that show, and I think Amazo looks much better in the cartoon than he does in the comics. I'm sure several comic readers who heard me say that are looking at their screens incredulously at the fact that I just said that, but that is my opinion. And who knows, in 15 years there may be a different person who points to how Slade and Lex look in this cartoon and think, yeah, I prefer that over the comics as well, and then I can join you in staring at them in confusion. There's also just the art style. I made various shots on this show, and it's telling that while making one I thought, this kinda looks like Legend of Korra, and while making another I thought, this kinda looks like She-Ra. I think some of the criticisms for the designs in this show are just a trained response to the art style. When it comes to the designs of all the civilians who don't engage in battle, I think you can trace most people's dislike to just how the show looks in general, and the fact that the majority of the characters look really young to reflect the origin story aspect of this Superman origin story. But when it comes down to it, and we look over at the villains who are some of the biggest examples of being pointed to as having bad designs, I think the single biggest flaw in the show is the fact that they kind of look similar. When you look at these villains, they all have the same underlying base element, modified Kryptonian technology. But that tech is the problem. Let's compare two other Superman shows. Here are what Parasite and Metallo look like in Adventures. Now, here they are in the animated series. The tech-based power motif is a connecting element, but if people don't like it, it's just going to connect dislike. And the blocky, roughly armor-like white or black tech kind of leaves stuff to be desired. I mean, I couldn't help but be disappointed when I saw Silver Banshee compared to her comic counterpart. It fits better with the show, but that's not gonna make people who don't like the design change their minds. It's just gonna drag down their opinion of the show. Especially if we can look at other mediums to see how wildly these designs can differ. The show is essentially narrowing a diverse cast of villains into fitting the same mold as a result of its plot. The second show I want to bring up is Smallville, because it had a similar premise. For a good chunk of that Superman origin, most supernatural things around Clark were also Kryptonian in origin, specifically mutations caused by kryptonite. However, despite so many powers coming from the same place, the costume design never went out of its way to make the characters look the same. So the media freaks never feel the same because they just look like people and sometimes have just wildly differing powers. As far as I can tell, the closest the show got to a shared design motif was the early stage Justice League with their hoodies and sunglasses, which people have made fun of. So, while having Superman's enemies get their powers from essentially the same Kryptonian source is nowhere near new, Adventures' use of technology adds an aspect where they look and function really similar, which starts to feel uninspired. Smallville got away with everyone being human because it was a live action show, but Adventures is animated, so the fact that so many of its villains just look like humans with bulky tech attachments where the only variety is color is kind of unengaging. And this show is not so married to realism that its villains can't get away with dressing abnormally. And when you start finding certain character designs bad, it starts to color your opinion of the designs of the characters with similar bases. And sometimes the explanations don't even work. Look at the Metallo robots, supposedly purely Earth-based creations, but so similar in look to the Kryptonian robots, I actually hope we later find out that they were based on them and this point I'm making becomes obsolete. Because until then, this is a perfect example of the designs being samey to the point of affecting something completely disconnected. I kinda wish they looked more like steel. I don't think the fact that their weapons are black makes Task Force X any different. Deathstroke and Atomic Skull's outfits look so similar. Damage at least has the perk of being shirtless and becoming huge. And nothing makes my point more than the episode several of them team up to fight Superman, and besides Ivo, they all look so similar, even after taking the uniforms into account. And Ivo doesn't even look that different until he goes full Godzilla. By the way, I think Parasite has the best design. And I know why the costumes look like this in universe. As I said, they're all based on the same technology. It makes sense Task Force X would have a uniform style as an organization. But having a logical explanation for why something is the way it is not going to make the fact people don't like that thing disappear if they dislike it for reasons besides whether or not it makes sense. I'm not saying this would be an easy problem to solve or anything. Honestly, if you don't even consider it a problem, I understand that perfectly. This show is definitely going for a style, and Kryptonian technology and interference is clearly changing how the world works, so it has to reflect that. But maybe if the outfits were more personalized? Let's look back at Parasite. I said that the changes in color don't really change the base design, but you know what? The fact Parasite looks like a monster is something. Imagine if Intergang altered their suits with paint and superficial flourishes so they don't just look like mostly white boring blocks. Give Heatwave some flame decals, have Banshee paint a skull on her helmet, give Livewire a jacket with lightning bolts on it, do something. I think it would be great if, like Livewire, everyone's powers just became part of them and they didn't need their tech anymore. Except, I hope that unlike Livewire, they don't just continue wearing normal clothes, because honestly she actually looks more boring now than she did before. Get this woman a lightning bolt symbol. But of course, so much of this video has been focused on the humans, I haven't touched on the Kryptonian side of things. After all, these started out as their stuff, and frankly, Kara makes such a great illustration of my points. The ugly bulky thing she was wearing fits the aesthetic and makes us suspect that she might be Zod. But once she gets it removed, her design is just so much better, especially when you look at it as an inversion of Clark's suit. And it's kind of funny that so soon after we know who Kara is, I find myself asking why she was even wearing it in the first place. She doesn't even wear it in her Conquest flashback. Was she really only wearing it so the audience would have no idea who she was? Brainiac looks fine. I like the voice and I mostly like the look, though when you put them together I find myself thinking, what? Overall though, the Kryptonians are the originators of the tech, and ironically they've actually personalized it more than the humans. So if this look is gonna fit anyone, it's gonna be them. And I can look at them and think, yeah, this is where Task Force X got all their tech. But as the show goes forward, I hope we get to see all the other villains start to personalize their looks more. But that's my analysis on the looks on this show and why people dislike them, ranging from people often dislike things that are new to the looks are kind of uninspired. What do you think? Tell me your own thoughts down below, and while you're at it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thank you, and good day.